Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Sober Life Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Jones. I want to thank you for taking a little time and tuning in, whether you're watching live or you're watching in the replay. Please take your time to like the channel and certainly leave a comment. Share this with your friends. And if you want to be a part of the Sober Life Podcast, maybe come on as a guest or suggest a topic, please leave a comment and let us know, and we'll certainly take care of that. We spend a lot of time going around talking to people about different aspects of recovery, addiction, and mental health. And the Sober Life Podcast is about living a sober life, sober being happy, peaceful, free, content. And that's what we're all about here. So again, if you're watching this live, put your comments in. We'll be able to see them and speak with you on the air. But beyond that, let me get to my special guest. This is a gentleman I've known for a couple of years now, on and off.
Correct.
We've been around a little bit. He's been in our trainings, and we've done other things. This is Sam Razmi. And Sam, you are from the Tampa area originally, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah. Thank you, first off, for having me on here. Yeah. So I came down here originally and got clean. So my sober date is January 5th, 2018. After many trial and error, trying to get this thing under my belt. And finally, I kind of gave up and doing it my way and actually taking people's advice and taking whatever suggestions and their guidance. Stayed down here for a few years, and my whole goal into, getting clean and everything. I have a son that lives in Brandon, close to the Tampa area. And so a big motivation was for me to end up getting back to him, having a house that, he and I can both call home.
Right.
And so for the past couple of years now, I've been living out there, but still definitely got to come out here down in South Florida and, see everybody that helped me get clean. And, you build these lifelong connections with these people. So it's, just because I moved to another part of the state doesn't mean I don't come down here as often as I can. So
that's awesome. We already have somebody listening in Rita Greenwald already. Hey, she's telling us it's a great podcast. We barely even started. If we're already impressing you, this is going to be a great day. Let me tell you. Sam, I got to ask you, you're a military guy.
Correct.
What branch and how long did you serve, and where did you serve?
So I was in the Air Force. I just did 4-year enlistment. I was in a rotational unit. I was part of the 822 BDS. So my AFSC, or my job description, was security forces, and there's only a few different bases within the Air Force branch that does more than just. So security forces is typically like your MPs of that branch. So they do like a lot of law enforcement base stuff. However, I got lucky enough to go to a more intense training. We were part of a special operations light infantry tactics unit. So I got to do a lot of good stuff, like, going airborne, air assault, got to shoot unlimited, amounts of weapons and ammunition. We got top-notch quality training. So it was great. I was stationed at Moody Air Force Base in Georgia, and being part of a rotational unit, you get deployed a lot. So most of my time I was, deployed more than I was stateside.
A lot of people who have addictive backgrounds, it's the military is not conducive to a healthy lifestyle as far as staying sober, or at least it hasn't been in the past.
Yeah.
Was that an issue for you with your addiction, or had it not really reared up at that point?
No, that's a great question. So it absolutely, how can I best say it? So I struggled with addiction beforehand, and I'm the type of addict, I guess you could say, that was lacking some type of purpose. Like in my mind, I always thought, okay, if I had some purpose, some kind of honorable thing in my life, it would help me stay clean and I could put all this mess behind me. I just felt like I was self-medicating for, being down, my depression, all this stuff. Like I, just felt kind of worthless towards myself. So obviously the only thing I knew, my only solution, was self-medication. And, before I joined the military, I was a cop. And when I was a cop for a little bit, I was a cop for about 11 months, didn't even hit a 12-year mark. And within that time, I relapsed again. And I was like, okay, you know what? Like I need to get out of here and bump it up a notch. So that's whenever I joined the military. And the only thing the military did for me was substitute one substance for another. And you were spot on with it. every branch, I don't care who you are, what your job description is or whatever, just drinking and having that lifestyle is definitely part of the lifestyle, especially when you're, kind of a combat veteran like myself. That's all it is. It's rough and tough and stuff everything down, and drinking and, smoking and dipping and all that stuff. Like it's definitely part of
the drinking and smoking and all that stuff was almost therapeutic or you guys used it therapeutically, like stress. That's how you dealt with it. Problems. That's how you dealt with it. Yeah. It's very much similar in first responders. We see with fire and police. After a bad shift, you go to the bar and you drink until you feel better, and then you go home. Yep. Military, I assume, is the same.
Oh yeah, it's definitely the same. It's definitely the same with it. But it's not just for, self-medicating yourself when you're feeling down and out. It literally is part of the lifestyle. So when you're happy, sad, angry, whatever that you find, whatever case may be, bored, just drinking is part of it. I mean, I remember right when I got out of basic training, because obviously you can't drink in basic training, and I went to tech school. I was still stationed in San Antonio, Texas. And obviously when you're in tech school, you're only allowed to drink when you're not on duty and you're not doing anything. And Monday through Friday, you're basically on duty 24/7. They can call you in anytime for, if there's an emergency or whatever the case may be. They need to do roll call. You can't be drunk there. Everybody was. And I used to always, hopefully nobody hears this. I mean, they're going to hear it now, but so back in that time, my favorite drink was Captain Morgan, and I used to fill up my canteen. I mean, you'd have like a big green canteen, and I used to fill it up with rum nonstop. And so while I was on duty, and they tell you all the time, especially being in San Antonio, like hydration is really important. So when you're in formation and doing stuff, like as soon as somebody says, like hydrate, like everybody has to stop what they're doing and hydrate. And I would just be getting drunk the whole time. And, thankfully nobody noticed then, but they definitely did later on in my career.
So you get out of the service, you're carrying your addiction still.
Correct.
What brought that to a change for you? At what point was it something's got to happen?
That's a really good question. So when I got out of the service, I was at the end of my enlistment. I was deployed right before I got out. We're talking a couple months before I got out. Right before I was out, I was still deployed. I get, a call from my ex-wife at the time saying that she's divorcing me, taking our kid. At that time when I was stationed in Georgia, she, had already, as soon as I left for my last deployment, she already left. So the house was completely empty. And so I came back realizing, okay, I don't have a wife. I don't have a kid anymore. I'm about to not have the military, so I have zero accountability. So as soon as I got out, I went balls to the wall further into my addiction, and I went back to my original DOC, which was heroin. I was an IV user. And I mean, immediately I became hopeless, homeless, just down and out. And, during that time, on top of my own depression, my ex-wife at the time used to say, and granted, like, I don't blame her for this because I was constantly in and out of her life, my son's life, and I didn't know what I was doing. So, not only from her, but from other people, I would hear like, God, I just wish you were dead, or you should just kill yourself. Like you'd be doing us a favor. At least we'd know where you are or something like that, and after hearing that for such a long time, you kind of start to believe it. So when I got out, I was using pretty heavily for about 3 months. And just, within that 3 months, I became homeless, all that stuff.
Doesn't take long, does it?
No, not at all. Not at all, especially when you have nobody in your corner.
You're really only a few bad choices away from that situation. I mean, and you don't know when that's going to come.
Absolutely. Especially when you're in that cycle. I mean, your only mindset, I mean, you have this tunnel vision and your only mindset is, okay, like I want to feel better. I want to numb myself and not feel this. Right. You don't care about any of the ramifications. So I figured, okay, I can't live the way I want to live. So at least let me die the way I want to die. And the way I wanted to die was to overdose. I wanted to die off doing ungodly amounts of fentanyl. And I used to play stand-up comedy on my phone every single night. And all I wanted to do was slowly drift off into nothingness, hearing people laugh and being happy in the background. And that was the way I wanted to die.
Wow. You're almost like torturing yourself. The whole world's laughing except me.
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow.
I mean, that's a good way of looking at it. Yeah, at that time, I wanted to hear people being happy because I was so unhappy.
Right,
and if I could hear laughter as I died, to me, that was a good way to go out. And one day I just had this epiphany to where I was like, you know what? I don't want to die. This is not like, this is not a game or anything. If I die, there's no second chances. There's no coming back from this. I'll never get to enjoy the little things in life, like, feeling the sun on my face, like tasting food, going to the beach. Just those little things are what kept me alive. And then, as I further, thought about it and progressed and kind of made that decision to get, better, obviously my other motivation was, what is my son going to think if I die? What is he going to tell his friends? What is my family going to think?
I have to ask you, because a lot of people might call that a spiritual awakening, a moment of clarity, whatever it might be. But it's very difficult. Most people can't explain where exactly that came from. It just kind of, for some reason, it came to us that things have to change. Was the same with you? Like there was no real catalyst that was different from any other day, and it just
absolutely
it occurred to you?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I could have easily continued that day doing what I was doing.
Wow.
And I, like you said, had a spiritual awakening, an epiphany, a moment of clarity, whatever it is you want to call it, but I woke up from not overdosing that day, and I just had this profound urge to live. I
love how we say these things, and it's like we think it's normal. I woke up from not overdosing. Regular people out there are horrified. They're like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah,
it's like, well, no, that for us that was a Tuesday.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean,
how horrible when that becomes a normal part of the conversation. That then I was gonna die, but I guess I didn't that day, and it's that simple. But so what did you do with that moment though? What did you do?
So when I had that epiphany, whatever you want to call it, the only thing I could think of was, okay, I need to get help. And the only way because I didn't have insurance, the only way I knew how to get help was to go to the VA. So
okay.
Which kind of segues us into
the second half of our conversation is going to be about that.
Exactly. So I actually went to the VA and I told them, hey, look, this is what's going on with me. I'm struggling with drugs, alcohol, all this stuff. Not to mention I'm trying to actively kill myself. I need help. What can you do for me? And they basically told me, we'll keep you here for 72 hours. We can keep you here under a Baker Act. But as of right now, we don't have any rooms upstairs. We don't have anything like that. So, once you get out, just stay in contact with us. Call us every so often. And as soon as we have a bed, then we'll bring you back in. And
hold on. That is a horrific thing. I mean, they don't have room they didn't have any other suggestion on things you could do to be okay. They didn't point you in the direction of even self-help groups or anything like that. They just basically said, stay in touch and maybe a bed will open up. Is that?
Yeah, at that time. Yeah. I mean,
wow.
Maybe I got, somebody who didn't really know, somebody who was new or something. I mean, I could, make a dozen excuses for them and I could make a dozen excuses for myself on, maybe I should have pried more. Granted, I didn't know what services were available to me. I just knew when I got out of the military during the TAPS program, like your transition out, they say, okay, if you need anything, go to the VA. As soon as you get to the VA, people are going to point you in the right direction for what you need and what services you're available to get. So I knew when I got out, I didn't even enroll in the VA for like a good, I think actually that day I went in to get help is when I enrolled at the VA. Because as soon as I got out of the military, I went straight, I just gung-ho into using. Yeah. So I did get out. I checked myself in. I did enroll and everything. But I had no idea what services I could get, what I was allowed to do or what benefits I could even apply for or anything. So yeah, basically I just, I stayed there for I think a night or two. And I was coming off of, the opiates and stuff. And I said, like I need Suboxone, I need Subutex, like something help me like take this off. And at the time the VA wasn't providing that. And the most they said they could provide me was like ibuprofen. And I was like, okay, get me the hell out of here. Not to mention you're going to kick me out in a few days anyways. So,
right.
So I said, to hell with this. I'm going to leave. And,
now, were they? I'm just curious. They held you under a Baker Act, which is about your mental status.
correct.
And they're afraid you might harm yourself or harm someone else. I get it. But while they're holding you, now you're detoxing. Were they trained at how to detox in that situation, or was it I'm not. This is not whatever we talk about today, folks. We're not indicting the United States military. We're not indicting the VA system. But there are holes, and it needs to be fixed. Were they properly detoxing people?
So I can say on my end, I was not properly detoxed. Granted, I was only there for a few days, and while I was there, I only saw a doctor. Well, I think I might have saw a doctor as soon as I got there. I can't really remember, but the only time I really remember seeing a doctor was when I kind of threatened them, hey, I'm going to AMA, I'm going to leave like this, I need Subutex, I need Suboxone. And then the doctor came in and said, like, unfortunately, we don't provide that here. We don't do that. We can try and make it as comfortable for you as we can. And I was like, what can you guys provide me? And, it was basically just, PRNs, Tylenol, ibuprofen, stuff like that. And I was like, get me the hell out of here. Like,
wow.
I need something a little bit better.
Wow.
So
you got out, and what did you do on your own then?
I got out. Thankfully, I reached out to my mother and I told her, this is what I tried to do. I need help. What can we do? And, even though my mother at that time loved me, she loved me from afar, and which I don't blame her at all. And, she said, okay, if that's what you want, I will help you. I'll give you my support. So she reached out to one of her contacts. They got me private insurance. They got me like Florida Blue or something like that. And I was able to go to a private treatment center, a for-profit treatment center. Granted, I was only there for about 11 days. That's all my insurance would cover, but it was enough time for me to detox over there. Even though I wanted to stay for at least 30 days or a little bit more. Right. They said, all we can give you is 11 days.
You also probably learned about what else you could do out there, about like meetings and different things, or connecting with people, or finding other ways to help yourself.
Absolutely.
Too, right?
Absolutely. So that wasn't the first time I had been to treatment. And, so I kind of knew a little bit what to expect. Granted, that was the first nicer treatment I went to. So I went to a prior treatment beforehand, and it was like a faith-based nonprofit program.
Yeah.
And it was basically just like a huge house with 15 bunk beds in it. So there were 30 guys in there. They didn't detox you or anything, but they gave you like food stamps and stuff like that. So when I went here, I was completely grateful. I was like, and I had tried other maintenance programs beforehand. I had tried doing methadone maintenance, Suboxone maintenance, staying on these things long-term. And, I always ended up going back to what I wanted, and on the side, I figured, okay, if I have these prescriptions, like maybe I can sell them to kind of get, I always manipulated the situation. So when I got to this program and they said, okay, we're going to give you the Suboxone, we're going to taper you off of it. I was like, in my mind, it's perfect. And then they started giving me other medications as well for my depression and everything. And I was so turned off by I was just like, I want to be completely pure. Granted, now that's not the case. I completely understand the importance of the chemical imbalance going on in my mind.
Oh, yeah.
And, how important certain medications are for me. But it was only through trial and error that I had to learn, okay, this was what worked for me. This is what didn't work for me. But any kind of substitute that would replace any kind of urge to use, or something that would substitute that chemical for the opiates, I was like, I don't want this. I've already tried it. I know where that rabbit hole leads me. I'm not doing it. Granted, I know there are a lot of people out there who do use Suboxone maintenance, methadone maintenance, and stuff like that, and it works fantastic for them. I mean, they're completely great. They've been on it for years. They, never go back to, using illegal narcotics out there and stuff like that, and they're completely good to go. Unfortunately, that's just not my story. I'm more, gung ho 100%. Like,
yeah, I agree. I mean, there's people that do different maintenance programs, and my motivation to get sober was much more about, I'm tired of not having complete control of myself, of not controlling my own destiny and doing all. I can't have anything that alters anything up top. And so that was the same for me. I had to, There are others, unfortunately, because of the imbalances or different things, where they might need those things.
Right.
But I really want to talk now. So you were successful during this time to get sober.
I was, yeah. I think, after being down and out and beating myself up for so long and trying all those different maintenance programs, I finally surrendered. I finally admitted to, the first, like I work AA, and I finally gave into the first step and said, okay, you know what? I've literally tried everything under the sun and none of it has worked for me. And it's possibly because these are my own recommendations and I'm trying to do things my way. And I said, what the hell? Like, my life is already as bad as it is. Let me try and take other people's advice. And so that's what I did. And then once I got out of treatment, they said, we can set you up with a halfway house. It'll be down in South Florida. And immediately my response was, nope, I got to get back to Tampa to be closer to my son, even though I had no place to live, no nothing.
Now, how old was your son when you were getting sober at the beginning there?
So when I got sober this time, he was 2.
Okay. So there were 2 years of him being out there when you were still actively using.
Yeah.
Was that a contributor to you getting sober? Was that a big part of it?
I mean, absolutely. He was a huge motivation for me to get better. And while I was using prior to getting sober, I always beat myself up. Like, how selfish can I be? I'm putting my own wants and needs ahead of my child and everything. And then when I would go to treatment, I still had those same thoughts in my mind. Like, here I am being selfish again, going to treatment when I should be around him. Mm-hmm. And, that's just me being my own worst enemy, and it wasn't, I was unable to love myself. And, thankfully I had other people, my sober support group and everything. And I knew everything that they were saying was true. Like, how are you going to love your son? How can you do all this stuff if you can't fix yourself first? And the way you got to fix yourself is going to treatment, building a proper foundation. And I knew all this stuff, but I couldn't emotionally accept it.
Yeah.
I
mean, with my kids were an anchor for me when I got sober. And there's a lot of people say, oh, you got to do it for yourself. I'm like, I don't care why you're doing it at the beginning. Whatever anchor is keeping you in place to see, sooner or later you figure out the way I'm going to have my son is becoming a better person. Correct. So I got to work on me.
I agree.
Did you have that kind of awakening? It's
100%.
I just don't get sober and it's all better. I got to work on me to be a good father.
100%. Yeah. I knew it was going to be an uphill battle. And I knew that, okay, this is not going to be easy. It's probably going to be one of the toughest things I got to do in my life. Yeah. I'm literally having to change everything I know about myself and change myself completely. But while I was having those, I was in there and having that thought of everything. I see Brian over there.
Yeah, Brian saying U.S.
Love that guy right there.
Love you, Brian.
Love you, buddy.
And there's my friend Jeannie's with us. Jean, thank you very much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
But yeah, while I was in there, I was obviously using him as motivation and to, I have to change myself to be better with him. But it was really while I was getting love from everybody else that I was finally able to love myself, and that's when it finally clicked to where I was like, okay, once I am able to love myself, I can pour out as much love as I can to my kid, and I mean, still to this day, he's my rock with this, And
I know your dedication to your recovery, your dedication to your family, the dedication to the jobs you do. And we'll bring it up more. You're working with White Sands Treatment Center right now over in the Tampa area. I think they are, right?
Yes, sir.
Oh, you get your hometown and everything.
I do.
That's great. But you also have a new dedication towards helping veterans.
Yes.
And was that born solely from your experience, or were there other factors that told you, I've got to help things, I got to make things better for people, I got to help the VA, help the veterans? What motivates you for that?
That's a really great question. It kind of fell into my lap. So when I got clean, and surrounding myself with other people that worked in treatment and stuff, they, I guess they kind of saw my passion for this, and they were like, why don't you come work in treatment? You'd be really great. And I heard all these war stories, like a lot of people working in treatment and they make their job, their program. And I said, absolutely not. Like, I don't want to do it until I hit a year. So believe it or not, I worked in the restaurant business for the first year of my recovery. And once I hit a year, obviously another one of my friends, approached me and he was like, hey, it's been a year. What do you think giving it a shot? And I said, you know what? Why not? Like, let me try this out. So I was a tech. And when I was a tech, I I just immediately loved it. I saw these people who were hurting and struggling and everything, but yet they made that decision to change their life and better it. And I said, like, if I can give these guys and girls like just a glimmer of hope and let them see that, okay, it worked for me, and I'm still in the process of this. Like, I put no stock in time, just as we talked about earlier, I'm one bad decision away from ruining my whole life.
Yeah.
So the only thing to me that time matters is to go to show, okay, he's been working something and something's been working for him. And this is his track record to show. But other than that, I mean, I could be having a horrible day and make a bad decision and throw it all for nil. So while I was in treatment, or while I was working in treatment and helping these people, I felt this huge passion for helping them. And I kind of took it upon myself. Like, while I was working there and learning more, I was trying to file stuff within the VA and everything. And I was learning more from other veterans within the community, like, hey, why don't you apply for this? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And I was like, why did nobody tell me at the VA about this? Like, I'm hearing this from word of mouth on the street. And I just took it upon myself to volunteer and help the veteran community out there. So while I was working as a tech, like, on my spare time, I'd go out and, help other veterans that are out on the street, help, give them food and stuff like that if they're homeless and everything, and kind of help point them in the right direction and saying, okay, I was in your shoes not too long ago and nobody gave me this advice. So maybe, you could have a jump start on it. And, I didn't really think anybody was paying attention to it. I didn't really think anybody was noticing. I was just doing this to kind of help my fellow brothers and sisters. And I got offered a job to work with veterans and to tell them about the different services and stuff like that they were provided. And I guess I got really good at it. I have no idea. I really see myself in them. And if there's anything I can do, any kind of services I can provide them, any kind of resource or whatever, just so they don't have to go through what I did, to me, I feel like I'm doing my job. And, somebody told me a while ago, like, seeing your passion with this and helping these people, like, not only is it, honorable and all this stuff, like, there's something addicting about that. And to me, that really stuck. And I was like, like, since I've been doing this, the people that have gravitated towards me has just been amazing to see that, because I see, not only am I passionate about this, but I also see other people's passion behind helping, veterans, first responders, things like, because these guys are the first and last people in and out, and, not for anything, but they get crapped on, they get shit on the worst.
Yeah.
They're kind of, this person is struggling with something, and let's just brush it under the rug. And if it's, kind of out of sight, out of mind, I can't tell you how many veterans I see that are out on the street that are homeless. They don't know where to go, and they've been homeless for years, and a lot of these old timers they come from a different area. So they're more prideful. They're more, I don't need help from anybody and stuff. And
you learn in the military, you learn in a lot of the first responder stuff, but especially in the military, you learn, it's just stuff. Nobody wants to. You're not going to walk around and talk about how you're feeling.
Yeah.
You're not going to walk around and talk about your problems and stuff like that. Because one, you don't want to lose rank. You don't want to lose your position. You don't want people thinking you're crazy or anything. So you just stuff it. And you do that for so long. And then you get on the outside. Now your only practice is, I'm not going to say anything. I got myself. I'll take care of it. I'm a Marine. I'm an Air Force. I'm whatever. And so they're not trained on how to even communicate their problems, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. A lot of guys and girls are afraid to say something in the military because they're afraid it's going to hurt their career. They're afraid, if I say, I'm struggling with depression or whatever the case may be, the military is going to kick me out. And a lot of these people, that's all they have left in life.
Not to mention the guy next to you want him to trust you. You have to have trust, especially if you're in a combat situation. And the last thing you want to do is let them know that you're having some problems going on. And because now, all right, well, nobody sit next to Jonesy because you're going to be screwed.
Yeah, he might not have your back.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, like, we all joke about it and stuff while you're in, and we all kind of bust each other's balls and everything. There are those few moments to where, an individual will really open up their heart and be like, dude, like, I'm really struggling. So I struggled with that myself when I found out, my wife was leaving me. And a really good friend of mine, me and him still keep in contact all the time. He went through the same thing at the same time I was going through it. And, as much as I tried to hide back my tears and everything and drown myself in the bottle, he was doing the same. And I think we both kind of just spoke about it at the same time. And it was probably one of the most like gut wrenching, heartfelt moments that I've ever had with another individual, because granted, like my issues suck, but his suck way worse. He had it 10 times harder than me, because he I don't want to put his information out there or anything.
No.
But he got done really bad by her, and just that painstaking experience that we both struggled with, like, just bonded us for life. And I mean, there's lots of people in the military that I still do keep in contact with, but he's definitely one that I will still to this day take a bullet for. I'll do whatever I can.
A couple of points I want to hit is, one is, does the military prepare you for the mental stress? I know they prepare you physically. They prepare you mentally as far as doing your job. But do they prepare you for the damage that might occur and the PTSD that might happen? And do they train people for that, or do they even talk about it? I mean, you can be honest. This is where change has to happen, and it doesn't change if we don't talk about it.
Right.
If it's missing, maybe it needs to be there.
So you bring up a really good question here. So they, I guess in a sense, so there's a classic saying, the military will get 100% out of you what they can. So you better try and get 100% out of the military as you can.
Okay.
And which means the military will literally break you down, take everything they can out of you. And then when they're done with you, they're done with you. Go on, like, you get a foot in the ass out the door. They'll set you up through the TAPS program, which is a 2-week-long program, which the majority of it is how to write a proper resume, and that's it. And then literally you go in one day, you're told, okay, you're going to do all these things. Your whole schedule is laid out for you. And then the next day when you exit, the world is yours. Nobody tells you anything anymore. You're a free man. It's just like you're out of jail, and they give you a bus pass.
After all this time, with what happened with people coming home from Vietnam, because that was like, that changed the world. That changed the military in America, because how they were treated when they came back. And World War II is different. World War I is different. But Vietnam, they still haven't learned to prepare their people for coming back and reintegrating.
No, those guys have my utmost respect.
Obviously,
they for nowadays in the military, when you're trying to hit a target or something like that, like the weaponry is so advanced, like it's no longer somebody's right there in front of you. They're hundreds of yards out there and stuff. And granted, you kind of know what you're doing, but it's not as impactful. And those guys were pretty much walked on. And the weaponry wasn't as sophisticated as it is now, so it's more brutal. And when they came back, they just, they got completely shit on by the community, and they still carry that burden now. So they definitely don't want to talk about it. So especially now, like when I run into a Vietnam vet, like I will, they're so down and out and depressed, and a lot of them are so suicidal. And I'll just take them under my wing as best as I can. Granted, a lot of them, I'll get some pushback from them, because they're like, "Oh, young buck, I don't want your help. What do you know?"
Yeah.
But at least I can tell them, like, look, like there's a lot of things that have changed within the VA, and let me at least provide you with those resources. And if you can't get it at the VA, let me show you the proper people who can provide you those resources. There's lots of nonprofits, for-profits, organizations out there who will give their blood, sweat, and tears for these veterans, but the vets don't know about it because nobody will talk about it. It's only the best way you can get this information is word of mouth, from another vet to another vet, or another first responder to another one. You'll never, there are people, like, granted, I don't want to say there's, bad people in the VA, because there's a lot of great people in the VA doing a lot of great things. But me personally, I would just like to see more awareness. And when they do have awareness and stuff like that, it very much mirrors what they do in the military, which are just briefings, or just meetings that they set, or just the higher echelon people having meetings about this, setting out a flyer. Let's have a few tables out there and some cookies and feed these guys some stuff. And then, all right, go find your own fucking way again.
Right.
Yeah. And so, like, people, for example, like Brian Sims, like these peer support specialists out there who, take the time out of their day and will literally walk hand in hand with these veterans every step of the way is just so great to see, because 10 years ago they didn't have this, 20 years ago they didn't have this, and these veterans, especially those old timers from Vietnam, like, it's so ingrained in them that they're all alone. That's all they know.
We don't learn lessons, and we really should have, because of that. With the Vietnam, and people are still coming back ill prepared. The services aren't all there. You made a point about the VA. They're doing what they can.
Correct.
But then you hear, whenever it comes up in a question about the VA and the services, or the lack of services, or waiting 3 months for an appointment and those kind of things, which happens, that.
Correct.
They yell funding, and then it's like, then it's not the funding, and it's what is it? Is it in need of a complete restructure? Is it a systemic problem, like how they think, or because you can't just throw a committee at things, put out a table of cookies, and expect that helps feed hungry people,
right? So there's a lot of things in the VA that, obviously can be changed. No place, no organization is perfect,
right.
And everybody struggles with certain things. But granted, I will say the VA has changed drastically, especially even since I got out of the military. For example, they give Subox and Subutex and stuff like, so they're hearing the needs and wants.
So they are catching up a little bit.
They are catching up, but they're just
got a long way to go.
I'd say they're maybe 10 years late, and it obviously understand the rules and regulations and policies and stuff. It takes time to catch up to these things, and there's lots of paperwork and process and stuff. And granted, the VA is completely understaffed. They're underpaid. A lot of these people are seeing dozens and dozens of people every day, so it's turn and burn. So they're exhausted. If you set an appointment earlier in the morning with the VA, you're probably going to get the best treatment ever. Whereas if you set it, later on in the day, because these guys are tired, they're exhausted. They've seen hundreds of people. They've probably been told "fuck yourself," a couple times. So I don't blame them, but I think the one thing that is missing is the passion for this, because like I said earlier, it is something swept under the rug. And as long as they get it, an attaboy from their director of the VA or from their boss or something like that, like, hey, you guys are doing a good job. To them, a lot of people there are like, okay, I did the best that I can. And unfortunately, some people within the VA, the best that they can is the bare minimum, which I've seen countless times where they say, oh, that's not our department. Where you want to go is over there. And then I'll go over there and they say, no, it's at another department. So I've run around to 5-6 different departments and can't get an answer from everybody or anybody, because they all just want to pass the buck. And at the end of the day, you just kind of give up and be like, all right, you know what? Like, nobody wants to help me, so why should I even help myself?
Well, from top down, I'm talking about top, like White House, Congress, Senate, top down, the VA should be just as important as the rest of the military. It should be. There should never be a situation where somebody who has served this country and finished their tour of duty, whether it's a 4 years, 8-year commitment, or retire in whether they've seen combat or not. Because when you go in, whether you're in combat or not in combat, all is a matter of timing. That's all it is.
Yeah.
You're prepared to do that.
Absolutely.
Nobody who's ever done that and served the country like this should ever be homeless, should ever be hungry. And yet in other countries, they're treated with reverence and they're treated with respect and with care, and they would never be allowed to be left out in the cold. But here it happens. Why? Have you had that question? Have you really figured out how is it possible that we can make this acceptable?
I've been doing this for a few years now, and I feel like I'm just starting to scratch the surface of this. There's a lot of different things. You can say why it's like this. But in all honesty, I would say that it's just a lack of knowledge and services that are given to the veterans. Because a lot of these vets who are homeless, who are struggling, who are doing all this stuff, they didn't just get out of the military and it just so happened. They've been doing this for years now, and it's only because that's all they know. A lot of these veterans who are out on the street, granted, you'll see maybe 1 or 2 out of every 10 of these homeless veterans are younger guys who are uneducated with that stuff. But the majority of them are older guys and girls who back in their day when they got out of the military, they didn't know where to go. They didn't know what to do. They didn't have certain services that they have now. So it's a lot easier to become homeless, to go out and beg for money because they don't know what is afforded to them, what they're able to get. And to be honest with you, a lot of them have been doing it for decades now to where they're completely used to it, you know?
Yeah, and it's a shame of it is you can see somebody out there begging, maybe begging for money, whether it's to get food or to drink or to whatever, and they could be doing that 2 blocks from a place where there's services for them, and they don't even know it.
Yep.
You know, so is that part of what your mission is too? Is to let people know what is out there?
Yeah, 100%. So, I mean, as you stated earlier, working over at White Sands, like I'm in the process of creating this whole program strictly for veterans, by veterans. And I mean, granted, we take civilians there as well, but the program I'm building is completely separate. And that's just one aspect of what I'm doing.
Is it necessary to keep that separate? I mean, are there different ways that you need to treat veterans, especially combat vets?
Well, I wouldn't say combat vet or not, but I would say, just out of respect to these guys and girls, veteran, active duty, first responder, whatever the case may be, these guys are sacrificing so much. Okay. I think that at least they're entitled to that. And it's not so much of, hey, you're special, you get special treatment. It's more of you've seen the discipline and the camaraderie before, and you've probably thrived in that environment. So let's give you a glimpse of that again. Let's give you the camaraderie.
But on a healthy side.
On the healthy side.
Wow.
Yeah. You were in boot camp, you were deployed, you had each other's back and everything, and that brought this bond together that is never going to be broken. So let's give you that again in treatment. And so granted, like I personally, I think it's healthy to combine the groups together with the civilians, because once they get out of treatment, whether it's 30 days, 6 months, whatever the case may be, they're in this bubble. But when they get out, that's where the real work is going to come into place. And they're going to have to rely on civilians out there. So it's definitely healthy to have a dynamic of veterans and civilians and first responders in a few groups together. But yeah, I definitely think the veterans, should have, it should be a lot of programs I see out there. The veterans have maybe 3 to 5 groups a week of just veterans, and they're only hour-long groups. What I'm doing is flipping the script. It's going to be 3 to 5 groups a week mixed in with the civilians. Everything else, strictly veterans, and whatever struggles you need, you're going to be with other veterans, first responders, active duty guys who are struggling with those same things.
I love that.
And
I love that. This is going on at White Sands.
Correct. Yeah. So, and we're expanding a lot of different things that, I really unfortunately can't go into right now, but it's going to be giving. So it's more of giving back to the community and seeing how we can help the veterans out there. We just want to be some pinpoint for people to think of. This is what separates this program from other places. They're granted lots of great treatment centers out there who offer amazing things. And being over at White Sands, like, unfortunately, we can't take the high psych individuals, people who are schizophrenic, schizoaffective, things of that nature. So,
but you also don't just leave. You find a place to help them. You find
I will.
other.
Yeah, I will never exfil a veteran out there without a proper discharge plan. Never.
Yeah.
I refuse to do it. And that's just one aspect of what I do. The other aspect of what I do is going out and networking with whatever agency, nonprofit, and stuff like that, and providing resources. So whether they need treatment or not, I could, honestly care less. I want these people to get the proper care that they need. And it ranges from applying for Service Connection, how to file for HUD-VASH, how to get an SSVF housing. Say a spouse of a veteran dies, or the veteran themselves and the family doesn't have enough funding for the funeral. There are programs and people and grants you can contact within the VA that will help you with these things, but a lot of people don't know about it.
Right.
So
there's not enough services, but of the services we have, people should at least know about those. They need to know.
Absolutely.
Let me get a couple of comments in here real quick
before
we have to end. Gene is saying, God bless you. This is Sandy. Full disclosure, this is my mom.
Hi, Sandy.
How incredibly sad that the military doesn't give these soldiers support before and after discharge. And the support is just not enough right yet. It's not there yet.
It's not there yet. They are, granted, I got out, we're talking 6 years ago, so I can't speak on what the TAPS program is now. I would assume it's still only a 2-week long program, but yeah, I mean, while you're in, you get support, but like we touched on earlier, you don't really want to say anything, because say you say to, your supervisor, I'm struggling with depression or whatever the case may be, you're worried about losing rank, getting discharged. How's that discharge going to affect the rest of your life on your DD-214 and stuff? And then once you are in the transitional program, the TAPS program, what services or what resources are they going to give you to take the next step? Are they just going to say, go to the VA and figure it out yourself? Or are they going to actually give you contacts? Are they going to tell you, this is the person you want to talk to? They're going to streamline you in. And
absolutely. There's a comment here: illegal immigrants get better care than our vets. I don't know if I'll go that far, but I would say that we spend a little more time talking about immigration than we do talking about reintegration from our vets. And that's probably something we should reverse that. We should worry more about our vets coming home than about somebody crossing the border. I mean, protect the borders, I get it. And we don't want illegal immigration, I get it. But we should spend more time talking about this other stuff.
Agreed.
Agreed. Karen is saying, oh, Scott, you're amazing. Well, thank you, Karen. Appreciate it. Karen, that's my friend Crazy About Costumes in Fort Lauderdale. Halloween's coming up, and Karen's always been a great supporter. Make sure you go to Crazy About Costumes in Fort Lauderdale.
Let me get a costume, Karen.
And let me see. You go to the patient advocate, as they will get what you need.
Correct. So that is a great point. Patient advocates are basically liaisons for the veteran. So if a veteran doesn't get the proper care that they need, or they get whatever kind of pushback from the VA, like, hey, I want to switch my primary provider or whatever, but they're not letting me because of X, Y, and Z. The veteran is able to go to a patient advocate and say, hey, like, this is what the VA is telling me. I feel like I'm not getting adequate care over here at the VA. And the patient advocate's job is to speak on that veteran's behalf and say, okay, this is the veteran's rights and regulation. Like, these are their rights to get the services that they need, and they're allotted to get. Let's make it happen for them. And I mean, there's also different individuals within the VA, like peer support specialists, VSOs, stuff like that, who do that. But that also ties into, do a lot of these veterans know about that? I would say maybe about 80% of the veterans, well, maybe it's definitely changed a lot more now, because word of mouth is getting out there, and a lot of veterans are speaking up and saying, okay, these are the resources that you're available to get. These are the services. But like when I got out, I had no idea what a patient advocate was. I just knew you go to the VA and you go to whatever appointment you're scheduled to have. So a VSO had no idea. Peer support specialist, no idea what that was. Patient advocate, no idea. I had no idea that these people were out there. So as I was going to state before, like when I got out, I would say probably about 80% of the veterans that would go to the VA only show up for their appointment, and then they leave. And that's it.
Instead of figuring out what else they can get.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
We can talk about this. I mean, we've come to the end of the show. Actually going a little bit over, but it's worth it. It's absolutely worth it. Absolutely worth it. We appreciate all the comments from everybody. If somebody wants to reach out and talk to you, do you want to put your number out there for them to call you?
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Yeah, please. If anybody needs any kind of help, any resources, any kind of guidance on anything, feel free to contact me. I'll give you my personal cell phone number. That number is 863-845-0386. Keep that phone on me 24/7. So I don't care if you're struggling at 2-3 o'clock in the morning, call me. If I don't answer, I promise and guarantee you I will call back.
And then if they want to check out White Sands, what is their website?
You can just go to whitesands.com. It's on there.
And great treatment center. And if they can't help you, they'll find somebody who can help you.
Correct.
But they're building a great program there for the vets. They've got other programs for everybody else too.
Yep.
And they're good people over there.
Thank you.
And all I can say is we're starting football season. Go Bucks, right?
Yeah.
Go Bucks.
We'll see how they do this year.
Who's quarterbacking this year?
I don't even follow it. So I will say that's my team only because I'm from Tampa.
Because Brady's done, right?
Brady's done. He's
Brady's
no longer there.
Brady's done. He's going to take up golf now. I want to thank you for joining me, Sam.
Thank you for having me, sir.
We've come a long way.
We have.
We still got a long way to go.
Yep. Slowly but surely, we're getting there.
And we just need more people like you, people like Brian Sims, people like White Sands who are willing to put something together specifically to solve a problem. We need more of that, and we appreciate everything you do.
Thank you for everything you guys do. You guys give back to the community. I mean, that's what made me gravitate towards y'all. So I appreciate everything that you do.
Well, we appreciate your partnership with One Brother, One Sister and everything else. So
Absolutely.
we will we'll probably have Sam back at some point because we've got a lot to talk about. We could spend all day talking about vets and everything else, and of course recovery and living sober. But for now, I want to thank everybody for joining us right here on Sober Life Podcast. Reminder, please like this show, share with your friends, and if there's some ideas you have about future shows for Sober Life Podcast, just give us a shout, and we would love to share those and bring those out to you. For now, I'm Scott Jones. For my guest, Sam Razmi, we want to thank you for joining us. We'll catch you next time right here on the Sober Life Podcast.